Joni Ernst was interviewed recently. She's up for re-election, and she was asked about a couple different situations having to do with potential openings on the Supreme Court. Now, we know that despite all of what was said by Mitch McConnell during the last year of the Obama presidency and the fact that they blocked Merrick Garland, that if they get their chance before the election, it doesn't matter if it's 2 hours before the vote, they're definitely going to put someone in. But she was asked a more specific question. What if Trump loses the election? And what if the Republicans lose their majority? What if the American people speak uniformly saying, we don't want you all in charge? What happens if a seat opens up then?
Different here is it could happen during that lame duck. We're talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She announced again she's ill with cancer. If President Trump is defeated, if Republicans lose control of the Senate, would you still support doing this prior to January?
Well, one, I wish nothing but the best of health for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think we all do, and I'll be praying for her. And it is a lame duck session. I would support going ahead with any hearings that we might have, and if it comes to an appointment prior to the end of the year, I would be supportive of that. We would need to have some very serious discussion about that. But again, it is, even though it's a lame duck session, it is still a Republican president and still a Republican Senate.
They'd have very serious discussions, somber tones, and they just think about, should we actually do this? I wonder. No, they'd pop champagne and set off fireworks inside the Capitol. You surprised at all, or is this just par for the course?
It's par for the course. I'm surprised politically that Joni Ernst, who's in a race that's not that should be less tight for her in Iowa in 2020, would do that, would say something like that. By the way, a shout out to David Yepsen, formerly of the Des Moines Register, who was doing that interview as part of that panel. He was sort of the guru of politics for a long time. And he's been on TYT with me, so that's why I'm saying.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that, first of all, I think that the Senate would not vote to confirm, even though you say there's champagne, and I don't think a lame duck Susan Collins or Mitt Romney. I think they would have a handful of votes that would say we shouldn't proceed with this. But of course, I could be the most naive.
You think
person.
Susan Collins?
I think Susan Collins.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in terms of proceeding with it, I just think that they would be voices against proceeding. John, I may be 100% wrong, but I don't. I think, I know some of these senators mildly, and I just don't think that they would, a handful of them anyway, would want to proceed with this because of what it looks like for the party. I think most of them would, and I think that, it might happen. I also, I don't. I don't understand in a bigger picture way, because I could be wrong about that, just sort of like reading the Constitution and inventing things that aren't in it, saying, well, now we have a Republican president, a Republican Senate, so of course we're bound to do that. It's not said anywhere that that's the case. And it was also looked at recently under Merrick Garland. They looked at all the constitutionality of appointment, of confirmation, all of that. And she's just inventing some rule that she decided helps her out here, but I don't know that it helps her out.
Well, and it would be bad enough if it was just inventing a rule, but they invent different rules based on what the situation tends to be.
Of course, that's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, constantly. We just talked about one with the census, right? I mean, so here's now the Ernst Amendment, which is already apparently passed and is in the Constitution.
Even specifically in this situation, Mitch McConnell was saying we can't have these hearings because the people need to have their voices heard. Because an election is coming up sometime this year. It doesn't matter that the Democrats won the last election. It needs to be heard. So her situation is the hardest test of that. The people have been heard. You lost the presidency. You lost the Senate. Should we go by their will and allow a Democrat? No. And Mitch McConnell would, of course, agree with her. There's no principle there whatsoever. And if it ends up, if somehow, I don't know, so Biden becomes president, the Democrats take the Senate, it's the last year of the Biden presidency. Well, now by your rules, they hold both things. Are you going to let a hearing go by? No, Mitch McConnell, if he's still around, isn't going to let that happen either. In the way,
they're going to have to do. It's clear they're going to have to write some kind of a rule once Biden's president. They're going to have to put or the Democrats win the Senate. They're going to have to put something in there, that a Senate rule, which can be changed, saying that, within 100 days of an election on either side, or 50 days or 90 days, whatever it is, on either side of an election, you cannot have the nomination of a Supreme Court justice. I mean,
the only thing is the Democrats write that and abide by it. When the Republicans take over the Senate, they're not going to abide by that. They'll change the rule and they'll get their seat.
You're right. But something has to give on this, because it's so given to interpretation. Again, also, it's only happened. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is still on the court and she's still working.
Yeah.
It's only happened that I remember during Merrick Garland. Though there's probably other precedent for it. There was cited actually at that time. Doesn't happen.
And let's just bear in mind one additional thing. I believe Ted Cruz was one of at least 2 Republican senators, maybe you can remember, who in advance of the election said, no, if Hillary Clinton wins, we're not going to hold hearings.
Right.
Maybe ever for Merrick Garland. That was not a principle of let the people speak. That's if the people speak and we don't like what they're saying, we're going to have 8 justices.
Yeah. Again, these are 1 of 100, right? Or 1 of 53 on the Republican side. And so it doesn't mean that that's what they all believe. She was asked this on the spot. She didn't seem prepared to answer it, actually, because whenever they start going into I'm going to pray for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's a stall tactic to me. So she, I think, was sort of thinking on her feet there. And I think that other senators will be more prepared with a better answer now that she was the guinea pig here. But
maybe
hopefully she's not in the Senate. So
one final thing I would say was in trying to predict what Susan Collins would do in that scenario, I think we should factor in that there's a very good chance that in that scenario she is herself a lame duck senator.
No. I'm saying that fully.
Okay.
So I don't think she would be vindictive, but there is again, it's a gut feeling. How many times have I didn't think Susan Collins was going to do us any favors on Kavanaugh. I never believed it. I find her to be, deplorable in that way. But I do think that she and others would, and maybe she wouldn't be one of them, but I think there'd be enough senators to make it so they wouldn't do it.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.